real Christian love in my heart. All I can say is that you people that have been putting these things up on posters in public places, you better be glad I'm a Christian.
For decades, Pastor Paul Crouch built one of the world's biggest Christian television networks, inspiring millions through faith and ministry. But behind the cameras, rumors of lawsuits, family conflicts, financial questions, and shocking accusations persisted. After his death, some claimed he exposed what was really happening inside TBN, while others argued the truth was far more complicated. Did Paul Crouch really reveal hidden secrets before he died, or has his story been misunderstood? Let's examine the facts, controversies, and legacy he left behind. The cracks behind TBN's perfect image. For years, TBN presented itself as a picture of faith, family, and success. To millions of viewers, Paul and Jan Crouch were the smiling faces of a ministry that claimed to spread hope around the world. But behind the cameras, a very different story was beginning to emerge. Long before Paul Crouch Sr. died in 2013, lawsuits, family disputes, and disturbing allegations had started pulling back the curtain on what was happening inside the ministry. Those closest to the family would later describe an organization struggling with secrets that could no longer stay hidden. One of the biggest turning points came through a former TBN employee named Enoch Lonnie Ford. Hired in 1992 to work in the ministry's Orange County Telephone Center, Ford later became involved in a legal battle that would attract national attention. In 1998, he sued TBN, claiming he had been wrongfully dismissed. That case ended with a settlement worth $425,000. But the controversy did not stop there. In 2004, Ford threatened to publicly reveal what he claimed was the real reason he had lost his job. He alleged that he had been involved in a encounter with Paul Crouch Sr. in 1996 and claimed his dismissal followed afterwards. Paul Crouch strongly denied the allegation. TBN also defended its founder, issuing statements that questioned Ford's credibility by pointing to his past legal troubles and history with substances. The dispute quickly became headline news, including a widely discussed report in the Los Angeles Times. Although the claims were never proven in court, they brought intense public attention to TBN and raised difficult questions about the ministry's leadership. The allegations also affected the Crouch family personally. Paul Crouch Jr., who had spent years working alongside his parents, later reflected on the controversy in a way that surprised many people. He admitted that, looking back, he believed his father may have struggled with same-sex attraction. However, he was also careful not to claim knowledge of the alleged relationship with Ford. According to Paul Jr., he asked his mother directly whether the accusation was true, and he later said she answered, "Yes, it's true." Even so, Paul Jr. acknowledged that he had not witnessed any of the events himself and could not personally confirm what happened. As these claims circulated, people also began noticing unusual details about Paul and Jan Crouch's personal lives. Although they continued appearing together on television, they were reportedly living largely separate lives. Each owned expensive homes in the same gated Newport Beach community, while Jan spent much of her time at a company-owned estate near Orlando, overseeing the Holy Land Experience theme park. Paul also owned property in Florida, but reportedly stayed there only occasionally. Paul Jr. later admitted that seeing his parents live apart while maintaining a united public image was confusing and painful for him. Years later, another heartbreaking controversy would strike the family. In 2012, Paul Jr.'s daughter, Kara Crouch, filed a lawsuit against Trinity Christian Center, TBN's corporate organization. She alleged that when she was 13 years old during a 2006 Praise-a-thon event in Atlanta, a TBN employee entered her hotel room, pressured her into drinking, and later gave her water she believed had been laced with substance. Kara said she woke the following morning with blood on the bed sheets, soreness throughout her body, and no clear memory of what had happened. She believed she had been assaulted. According to the lawsuit, Kara later told both her mother and grandmother, Jan Crouch, about the incident. Instead of receiving comfort, Kara claimed Jan questioned why the man had been in her room and blamed her for what happened. The lawsuit argued that Jan failed to properly report the alleged misconduct, despite her leadership position within the ministry. TBN denied wrongdoing, arguing that Jan learned about the situation only as a grandmother, not as a ministry official, meaning mandatory reporting laws did not apply. The legal battle lasted for years. In 2017, a jury rejected Kara's argument that Jan had a legal duty to report the misconduct under California law. However, the jury still found Jan's behavior contributed to Kara's emotional suffering and awarded damages that were later reduced to $900,000. In 2019, a California appeals court upheld that award, using unusually strong language to describe Jan's alleged treatment of her granddaughter, calling it outrageous and stating that blaming a traumatized 13-year-old exceeded the standards of basic human decency. TBN chose not to challenge that ruling further, bringing the case to a close in 2020. Paul Jr. later described the emotional conflict that followed. He said ministry leaders repeatedly encouraged him to question his daughter's account, but he refused. He insisted Kara would never invent such a story, and said he ultimately chose to stand beside his daughter, even though doing so deepened the painful divide within his own family. The family's struggles did not end there. Paul Crouch Sr.'s health steadily declined in his final years. According to Paul Jr., his father battled alcoholism and other personal issues that contributed to his deteriorating condition. Family members claimed doctors had urged Paul to stop drinking years earlier, but they said he continued consuming alcohol despite the warnings. Paul Jr. also described being prevented from seeing his father during one of his hospital stays because he did not know the private security code used to identify him. Only weeks later, Paul Crouch Sr. died at home in 2013 from degenerative heart disease. Paul Jr. later revealed that neither he nor his immediate family were informed when his father passed away. 3 years later, Jan Crouch also died after suffering a stroke. Once again, the family division became painfully clear. Paul Jr. said he was given only 1 day to travel to Orlando to say goodbye and was unable to arrive in time. He also said neither he nor his family were invited to either of his parents' funerals. Despite everything that had happened, he remembered his mother as someone capable of showing deep compassion while also being fiercely controlling in business. He admitted many people still thanked TBN for changing their lives, even while others remembered the organization for very different reasons. At the same time, another major legal battle was unfolding inside the family. Paul Jr.'s daughter, Brittany Crouch, and her husband, Michael Coper, had both worked in senior positions within TBN. After Brittany reportedly raised concerns about financial irregularities in 2011, both were dismissed from the ministry. TBN responded by filing multiple lawsuits accusing the couple of fraud, embezzlement, and misusing confidential information. Brittany and Coper fought back with lawsuits of their own, alleging financial misconduct and misuse of ministry funds. The courtroom battle became so intense that one federal judge openly criticized TBN's legal strategy. Judge David O. Carter stated that the ministry's repeated legal actions appeared designed to overwhelm Brittany and Michael rather than resolve the actual issues. He wrote that the aggressive lawsuits gave credibility to the couple's claim that TBN was retaliating against them for raising concerns about possible financial wrongdoing. The main dispute was eventually sent to arbitration, while years of legal costs forced Michael Coper into bankruptcy proceedings. Even then, TBN continued fighting over the financial consequences of those lawsuits. By this point, the image of a united ministry had largely fallen apart. Former insiders, public court records, and even members of the Crouch family themselves painted a picture of an organization facing accusations bitter family conflict, and growing questions about what had really been happening behind TBN's closed doors. But as the family battles grew deeper, what happened next behind closed doors? Keep watching to find out. The legal battles never really ended. Many people believed the biggest controversies surrounding TBN ended after the long legal fights involving the Crouch family. But the courtroom battles were far from over. Even after years of lawsuits, public accusations, and painful family divisions, the network continued facing new challenges that kept raising questions about its leadership and direction. One earlier dispute eventually ended with TBN receiving a default judgment after years of legal proceedings. While that chapter closed, it did little to quiet the growing criticism surrounding the ministry. Instead, it became another reminder that legal conflict had become a regular part of TBN's story. Then, in 2025, the network found itself at the center of another major public dispute. This time, the disagreement involved television personality Dr. Phil McGraw and his company, Merit Street Media. The partnership had launched only a year earlier, with Dr. Phil's production company creating programming while TBN handled nationwide distribution. On paper, the deal looked like a strong partnership between two well-known media brands. Behind the scenes, however, the relationship quickly fell apart. Merit Street accused TBN of failing to deliver the national audience it had promised, withholding payments, and leaving the company burdened with heavy debt. TBN responded with its own lawsuit, claiming Dr. Phil and his team had overstated the network's expected reach, misrepresented ownership of certain media assets, and failed to meet important production commitments. Dr. Phil's legal team strongly rejected those accusations. His attorney argued that the lawsuit was an attempt to shift attention away from TBN's own problems. According to the defense, Patesky Productions had delivered hundreds of television episodes while losing millions because of the breakdown in the partnership. Rather than accepting responsibility, they claimed TBN was trying to place the blame elsewhere. During a federal court hearing on September 16th, Dr. Phil's attorney, Charles Babcock, painted a picture of just how difficult the situation had become. He said the 75-year-old television host had fought for months to avoid bankruptcy because he did not want to rebuild his career at this stage of his life. But according to his lawyer, the relationship with TBN had become so toxic that bankruptcy eventually became unavoidable for Merit Street Media. As a result, Dr. Phil Primetime was placed on hold while the legal battle continued. Watching these events unfold was especially painful for Paul Crouch Jr. Despite everything that had happened within his own family, he said he still wanted TBN to fulfill the original vision his parents had for the ministry. He expressed hope that the network would continue providing faith-based programming around the clock, just as they had intended when they built it decades earlier. At the same time, Paul Jr. could not ignore the similarities between the network's past and present. Looking back, he said he had once warned his parents that taking legal action against his own daughter, Brittany, could have lasting consequences. He believed those lawsuits would open what he called Pandora's box, creating problems that would continue for years. Reflecting on everything that followed, he quoted a well-known Bible verse: "If you live by the sword, you will die by the sword. You reap what you sow." Whether someone sees that statement as a warning, a lesson, or simply one man's reflection, it captured the painful reality surrounding TBN. The ministry that once stood as a symbol of unity and faith had become known just as much for courtroom battles, broken relationships, and public disputes. For many observers, the questions surrounding what really happened behind TBN's closed doors had not disappeared. They were still unfolding years after Paul Crouch Sr.'s death. How did TBN build its empire? Let's find out. The fundraising machine that built a media empire. As controversy surrounded TBN from inside and outside the ministry, another question continued to surface. How has the network grown into one of the richest religious organizations in the world? The answer, according to supporters and critics alike, was found in the fundraising model that Paul and Jan Crouch had perfected over decades. Every telethon, every special broadcast, and every appeal for donations became part of a system that transformed a small Christian television station into a global media empire. One of the clearest examples came during a live TBN praise-a-thon. Looking straight into the camera, Paul Crouch told viewers the ministry needed $8 million to expand Christian broadcasting across India. He said the goal was to spread the gospel throughout the country and reach more than 1 billion people. Even those who felt they could not afford to give were encouraged to pledge anyway. Crouch described it as a step of faith and asked viewers a question many would never forget. Do you think God would have any trouble getting $1,000 extra to you somehow? The appeal worked. By the end of that evening, viewers had pledged enough money to place Christian programming on about 8,700 television stations across India. To faithful supporters, it was powerful proof that people believed in TBN's mission. But critics looked at the same event and asked a different question. If the ministry could raise millions in just one night, why did it always seem to be asking for more? That question became even louder because TBN was already one of the wealthiest religious broadcasters in the world. Financial records showed the ministry generated more than $170 million each year, with roughly 2/3 of that income coming directly from viewer donations. Unlike many television networks, TBN carried no commercial advertising. Its growth depended almost entirely on the generosity of ordinary supporters. The ministry's financial position also surprised many observers. Public tax filings showed hundreds of millions of dollars in assets, including large investments in government securities and tens of millions in cash. Since the late 1990s, TBN had reported annual surpluses averaging nearly $60 million. Those figures caused critics to wonder why fundraising appeals remained such a constant part of the broadcasts. Some watchdog groups argued the ministry already had more than enough money to fund future expansion without continually asking viewers to give. One nonprofit organization that monitored religious ministries even urged Christians to stop donating, claiming TBN possessed far more resources than it actually needed. Its chairman described the ministry's financial position as over the top. TBN strongly disagreed with that criticism. Ministry officials explained that continual fundraising allowed the network to expand without taking on debt. Purchasing television stations, leasing satellite space, and launching broadcasts into new countries required enormous investments. According to the ministry, regular donations ensured they could continue spreading the gospel while remaining financially independent. There was no denying how successful that strategy had been. What began as a single Christian television station eventually became the largest religious broadcasting network in the world. Around the clock, viewers could watch sermons, healing services, Christian talk shows, inspirational films, and worship programs. TBN's broadcasts reached audiences across multiple continents and were translated into 11 different languages. In the United States alone, more than 5 million households watched the network each week, giving it a larger audience than many competing Christian broadcasters combined. Even famous televangelists who once led their own successful ministries eventually brought their programs to TBN because of its enormous reach. Paul and Jan Crouch built a global Christian broadcasting network that reached millions. Critics argued its rapid growth was also driven by prosperity gospel teachings, which encouraged generous giving with the promise of divine blessings. During fundraising broadcasts, Paul Crouch often compared giving to God to a loan that God would repay. For devoted supporters, those words strengthened their faith. For critics, they raised concerns that financially struggling viewers might feel pressured to donate money they could not easily spare. Many of TBN's most loyal supporters came from modest backgrounds. Reports suggested that around 70% of all donations were less than $50, with many contributors living in rural communities across the southern United States. Individually, those gifts seemed small. Together, they built one of the most financially successful ministries in the country. Those donations also supported a lifestyle that attracted growing public attention. The ministry also owned assets that many churches could only imagine. Paul and Jan traveled on a $7.2 million private jet, drove luxury vehicles, and had access to dozens of ministry-owned homes, including mansions in Newport Beach, a mountain retreat near Lake Arrowhead, and a ranch in Texas. Other family members also benefited. Paul Crouch Jr. held a senior executive position, while another son, Matthew, received millions of dollars through the ministry to produce Christian films. Questions also surrounded how the organization was managed. Oversight rested largely with a three-member board consisting of Paul Crouch, Jan Crouch, and Paul's sister, Ruth Brown. During a legal deposition, Jan reportedly said she did not even realize she was a corporate officer and could not remember the last board meeting she had attended. Those comments led critics to question how such a large organization was being governed. Despite all the criticism, millions of viewers remained deeply loyal. Many believed the Crouches' financial success was evidence of God's blessing on their ministry. To them, the expanding television network, impressive headquarters, and worldwide influence were signs that God was opening doors for the gospel. Some supporters even argued that if the ministry had struggled financially, they would have questioned whether God was truly behind it. For millions, it was a ministry that strengthened their faith and transformed their lives. For others, it became a symbol of unanswered questions about wealth, leadership, and constant fundraising. So, what do you think about TBN and how far the church has come? Let us know in the comments section below. In the end, Paul Crouch's story remains a mix of remarkable success, painful controversies, and unanswered questions. Whether you see him as a visionary or a deeply flawed leader, his legacy still sparks debate today. Like, subscribe, and join us for more untold stories.